If you've been paying attention, this is the 100th episode of the Teach Joyfully podcast. Wow, when I started, I just never envisioned taking it this far. It was just kind of a little project I wanted to try. But here we are, episode 100. And to celebrate, I'm giving away a $100 Teachers Pay Teachers gift card. I'll put the directions on how to enter the drawing in the show notes. The winner will be notified individually and announced on next week's episode. All right, today is obviously all about how to use task cards in the classroom. I love ideas, activities, and lessons that we as teachers can use over and over again. They aren't one and done, but reusable. Task cards are exactly that, something you can use for any subject or concept. They have tons of uses and tons of ways to use them. In fact, the possibilities are endless. Now, what's not to like about that? I'm Lisa Burns, a teacher success coach, veteran elementary teacher, and mom of 5. And this is the Teach Joyfully podcast. Thanks for joining me today. Are you missing out? Team H.O.P.E Insiders get extra encouragement, tips and tricks, surprise freebies, and more. Become a H.O.P.E Insider today and get access to all kinds of freebies at www.hopeineducation.com/vault. So let's dive into episode 100, all about task cards. Now, you've probably heard about task cards and may even use them, but for some teachers, this might be a new concept. Either way, I'll begin with an explanation and some examples for task cards and possibly some ideas you haven't even thought of, even if you do use task cards. Let's begin by talking about what task cards are and their purpose. Task cards are individual cards with a task related to current learning or past learning, like review. So you're either reviewing or going deeper. The task cards used in your classroom can be either physical or digital, like boom cards or Padlet are great for task cards. We use task cards to have students do a specific task or solve a problem, but the real purpose is for students to demonstrate understanding or to think deeper, to apply and synthesize information. They don't have to be graded, but task cards definitely lend themselves to doing that very easily. Typically with task cards, we want students to think deeper or to synthesize information. But sometimes we really just want to know, what do you understand about this and what don't you understand? So task cards don't necessarily have one purpose. There are 7 ways that I use task cards in the classroom. Individual practice. So each child doing something individually to practice something, and they each get task cards. They can have the same task card, or they could each have a different task card. I also use task cards in groups or partner work. This is a great use for task cards. I think it's a lot of fun. Students enjoy it, and it gets students to talk through the work so that they are getting different perspectives on the problem. Early finishers is a great use for task cards. Make these really fun and creative for students to go a little bit deeper on something that clearly they understand since they finished so quickly. Task cards can also be used as formative assessments. For example, an exit ticket. Another way to use them is centers or stations. There's lots of ways to use them for pretty much any subject within this format, but also included in this particular category would be games like Around the Room or Scoot. Those would be another great use for task cards. You can use task cards for review. You can use them for warm-up or even morning work. There's endless possibilities. So let's get to what you're really wanting, all those ideas for using task cards. I have 11 different ideas for you today on ways to use task cards. Number 1, math word problems. This is a great use for task cards because students can have a problem that they actually have to think through and synthesize in order to be able to use the math that you've been teaching to solve the word problem. It's a great formative assessment. It works great individually or in partners. Number 2, math facts. Math facts and doing them as fast facts, so students have to set a timer and answer all of them that they can as fast as they can and then write down their time. That is a great use of a task card. Number 3, Graphing or any other kind of diagram, using the graph to answer questions or create a graph with this information, those kinds of things are perfect for task cards. This is a great situation for students. You can do this not just with graphing, but with other types of information. But dealing with data is a great way to use task cards. All right, number 4, writing prompts. You can target specific skills, writer's crafts moods, all kinds of things with a writing prompt. So imagine your writing prompt is an idea for a story and students have to write 3 different kinds of leads for that story. That is a great way to use a task card. They're practicing how to write different kinds of leads around a specific topic or idea. Number 5, reading. Now this one might seem like it's a little bit harder, but it actually isn't. I like a task card for reading that's something like, as you read today, think about the main character or the setting, plot, theme, you get the idea. And then draw a picture, list their character traits. And then I would say don't forget to include the character's name and the title of the book that you're reading. You can do this with almost any element of a story, setting, plot, theme, and on and on. There's all kinds of ways to use them, and it doesn't matter what book students are reading. So this can be on their individual reading books. It can be on a book that's been assigned to them. Number 6, another way to use them with reading is to have an excerpt that students will read and then analyze. It doesn't matter what grade level you teach. It is absolutely possible to do this with any grade level. You just find an excerpt from a story. It can be one that you've already read. It can be one that you haven't read before. Put it on the task card. Make sure it's at your student's reading level, and then give them something to do with that particular excerpt from the story. They could figure out what genre it is. Maybe if it's a description of a character, then they could talk about the character. There's all kinds of things that you can do with this. Get creative. The next one is reading vocabulary. So you might have something that says, in today's book we read about blank, and the main character said blank. What did they mean by that? That could be a task card. You could have various vocabulary words from reading. You could have a vocabulary related activity on the task card and give the student a vocabulary word or several vocabulary words, have them illustrate them, act them out with a partner, all kinds of things that you can do for students and vocabulary. And number 8 is phonics. Now, if you're a primary grade teacher and you already use some sort of clip cards for practice, especially with phonics, those are task cards. You can use anything like that as a task card. It's very effective, as you already know. You can use task cards for syllables, count and separate. You can do phonics practice with break and replace. You have the word bat, remove the first sound, replace it with another or a blend to make a new word. Then remove the vowel, replace it with a different vowel. That makes a new word. Or you have pictures. Bat, spell that word. Hat, how will you change bat to make that? Hit, what do you need to do to go from hat to hit? Write it down. Or students can find rhyming words with the same spelling pattern. Make a list. These are great for a centers or word work activity for students. Number 9, writing. Grammar, usage, and mechanics. Fixing errors is a great way for students to use a task card. If it's laminated, they can write right on it and then wipe it off when they're done. This gives students a chance to practice some of the things that maybe they struggle with in their own writing. Sometimes it's easier to find errors in other people's writing than it is in our own. And so this is a great way to practice and then have to go back and apply it to our own writing. The next one is science. Students can be given a list of materials to set up an investigation or an experiment. They can answer a question citing evidence from what you've learned, or they can place the events of the life cycle of a butterfly or anything else on a timeline. For history, if your students are doing a research project, you can have task cards that break the research down into individual tasks. Find a primary resource for such and such. Find out blank, or answer a question. What did Abraham Lincoln mean when he said this government of the people, by the people, and for the people? Or you can answer, what is a community? Or place these events on a timeline. There's lots of ways to use task cards for history. You can use task cards for geography. Students can identify regions, climate zones, states, countries in a continent, They can identify all the continents. They can identify oceans. You could ask a question, what are the 7 seas and why does it not include all the seas in the world? If students are going to be using your task cards in small groups or in partners, you can give them a discussion question. And I know I said 11, but here's number 12. I just couldn't resist. You can use task cards to practice your rules, procedures, and expectations. Give students scenarios and have them prep together to act them out for the group, and then come back together as a class and review those rules, procedures, and expectations that students have their little skits prepared for. It's a lot of fun and a great way for everyone to learn how to behave in your classroom. All right, a quick recap. The 7 ways that I use task cards are individual practice, group or partner work, early finishers, sub-plans, centers or stations, review, warm-up or morning work, and formative assessments. I can't wait to hear how you're using task cards in your classroom. If you want a task card sample that you can print off, I will have that in the show notes for you. So that's it for this episode of the Teach Joyfully podcast, my teacher friends. My sincere thanks to you, my listeners, for tuning in. And for those of you who have taken the time to post a review, email me your thoughts or DM me on Instagram with your feedback and topic requests. You can find the show notes and all the resources mentioned in the episode on my website at www.hopeineducation.com/podcast. And remember, a happy teacher is a good teacher. Until next time, teach joyfully and take care of you.